All right. Here we are, part three. Now the plumber's gone. It's working.
We have running water with no leaks.
You
We're
know
getting
what?
somewhere.
I just want to tell you. Oh, I'll do that on film. Okay. Okay, so what I want to talk about is what David Icke said.
Okay.
So David Icke said that the human eye can't see everything that's in the space, including the EMFs, I'm sure, including spirit, including everything.
Yeah.
Including maybe there's multiple realities right now. Like maybe there's this, but behind that is something else.
Yeah.
So how does that fit in then with that theory that you just talked about? Right? Because he's saying there's limitations in these eyes. But I think that it's like any part of the body where they say we have junk DNA. I don't think it's junk. I just think it hasn't been activated. So I think maybe our eyes have the capability, it's just not been activated.
Is it these two eyes that
We see with.
we see the physical world?
Oh,
yeah. 100%.
What? So say it for
100%. So
people.
these two eyes will help us see the physical world, right?
Yeah.
It's these two eyes
Yeah.
that we have here. But
Yeah.
if you want to go beyond what this physical world can offer, there's another sense that we need to activate here.
And what do you
Right?
call
And
that? What do you
You
call
could call
that?
it the sixth sense. You could call it, I mean, there's lots of different names for it, but
Well, what do
it's an
you
inner
call it?
sense. I call it an inner sense.
Inner sense.
It's very, very sensitive to realities that are not in, I would say just they're not physical.
Okay.
That's how I distinguish between that, because this is a
Wow.
physical reality
Yeah.
that we can interact with our five senses,
Yeah.
right? This inner
Yeah.
sense goes beyond that.
Okay, so you know how I
Right.
see that? This is 3D, three-dimensional earth plane, earth plane stuff.
Yeah.
The seeing from the mind's eye, if you want to
Yeah.
call it that,
Yes.
or whatever, is fifth dimensional kind of, or even beyond, above.
Right.
So I'm looking at it as dimensions.
Okay.
What do you
Physical
think?
dimensions?
Like this physical dimension.
Right.
I don't know that 5D is physical. It might just be all of us communicating from our pineal glands with no body. I don't know, right?
Right. But then again, I agree. There seems to be three dimensions to this stuff
this
that takes
earth
up
plane.
space here. I guess
Yeah.
it's true, but what simulates that? What simulates the geometry? There has to be some type of field of information that is making this kind of appear in our mind, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something much deeper in reality. I think we're moving to that in science. We're starting to realize that there is a very subtle field of energy that we're swimming in right now that seems to be involved in just bringing this physical world to life.
Is
like
that
a movie.
even in your electrical engineering field? Would you say that
With what I learned, absolutely not. The science that I learned is so basic. You know, when you're talking about electricity, you're talking about, we believe that there seems to be these little electrons flowing through these wires, right? This seems to be what kind of brings the very theory of electric current that flows through a wire, right? It's these little tiny electrons that
are they visible or are
no,
they invisible?
Absolutely not.
So they believe that that's invisible.
But we don't really know what an electron is. That's the problem. We have found a way to quantify it mathematically.
Yeah.
And we've been able to do experiments to show that math seems to be right. So the only thing we know about really electricity and the fundamental building block of it is something geared around a mathematical quantity, right? So it's math, but there's something deeper about what's going on here. Like we can't look at it. There's a limitation about looking at the world through the lens of math. Math is great, I love it, but there's something deeper about the nature of reality that goes on beyond math. Math is just a language of manipulation of mathematical quantities. You can add, you can subtract, you can build space, you can subtract space. You can do all these things with math, and it's true. But it essentially takes out the creative, intelligent aspect of reality? Because there's some type of intelligence that's involved in kind of simulating, a field of information in such a way that we can build our mathematics upon. So
Isn't
we
that the
haven't
sacred
understood,
geometry?
again, yes, but we haven't understood the fundamental reality here.
Hmm.
The fundamental reality is not math,
Okay, tell me
right?
what you think it is. Yes.
Well, if we want to look at it through, you know, the nature of the elements, if you want to go that way,
Like fire, air, water, earth,
space.
space.
Space is the most basic element that you can get to.
Okay.
So I would question whether or not we have an accurate model of what space is in science, because the only one we have is what Einstein tells us, is that space is something that is synonymous with distance, right? Because if you look at this takes up space. The only way you know it takes up space is because you can take a measurement from one side to the other, and you can measure that there's a distance involved. And of course, you can manipulate that with math to kind of create all kinds of geometry with that, but it's based on distance. So I'm relative to you because there's a distance between us. You can measure that. So you're about a meter away from me.
Yeah.
See, that's how we would kind of define space.
Wow.
But that doesn't that blocks us from understanding anything universal.
Okay, so tell me.
Because is there anything, like, in order to understand true unity, I'm not relative to you through a distance dimension. We are the same.
Yes. I'm constructed of the same thing that you are.
Sure. But it would take a very enhanced spiritual, mature mind to be able to see it that way. So there's a level of spiritual maturity involved in looking at the world this way.
Can you define?
You know what I mean by that?
Yes. I was just going to say, can you define spiritual maturity?
I would look at it as an enhanced level of awareness, an enhanced level of human perception, a much more enhanced way of looking at it more holistically, as opposed to more just individually, as it being this relative to this, and everything's separate, and that has a name, and this has a different name. This is we look at everything as separate. Yeah. Like, that's a tree over there. This is a can of Coke or a can of pop. Yeah. Everything is separate. So what would it mean if I can't be the same as this? Why? What's telling you that you're different? What it's constructed of? Is it your sensory body? You could touch your arm and say that's me because you can feel it. Yeah. You touch that can. Do you feel that can? I do with my finger. You feel it because you have a sensory system in your finger. But I'm talking about you need to look at it from the can's perspective. Look at it from the tree's perspective. We don't have that sensory body connected to that. There's something that needs to grow within us to be able to start feeling the natural environment more universally. How do we do that? Well, I think you need to look at some of the spiritual masters from the past that have actually achieved this state. And who would you say has? Probably someone like Jesus. Oh my God. Randy, you're going to love this man. He's into Jesus too. Well, I think we would need to look up to this guy, because I think if the stories are true, he was one that was able to feel the natural environment holistically. So if that person over there was feeling pain and this person over here was feeling something different, he was feeling all of it all at once. Wow. So he was truly a universal being. Wow. And he would be one that would look at the world holistically. Yeah. Right? And not see this being separate and that being separate. No. That wouldn't even be a part of him. That was something that's dissolved away. Yeah. So if that man, so if that man that he could feel was having pain, he would not be all right until that man was all right, because that man and him are the same. It's true. It's like, well, yeah, it's something that just keeps, it's like a fueling fire that's in you from other people who are in serious misery. Yeah. And he would want to attend to that. Like, he dropped everything, I think, and he would just wander around the planet and just cater to some of the misery and suffering in the world because he felt it. Yeah. And he was just navigated to go to different areas. At least that's what I think. Wow. I could be wrong. Well, it's another aspect of him that people don't really talk about, like that universal part. They talk about his story about
crucifixion, hanging on the cross, dying for our sins, blah, 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 blah. But so what I want to ask you then is, would he be able to, if he was into this whole thing, would he be able to feel a tree and communicate with a tree and know what a tree was like? Is that
I would say it's a definite possibility.
okay? Okay. So what do you
Like
think, if that's who he was, what do you think his mission was? To eliminate suffering? Is that what you?
Well, he seemed to come at a time when suffering was at its worst, didn't he? Chaos was very, like, everything was chaotic.
Yeah.
People were suffering, people were in misery, people were lost their connection to this divine source. People were judging each other, people were hating each other, people were, it
But
was a
isn't that
mess.
the human condition? Like, isn't that the
It's
way
not
that
the
we
it's
are?
not the fundamental one, no.
What's the fundamental one? The universal
Yeah.
thing?
I
That
think
we
we're all connected to that.
We are capable of what Jesus did, is what you're saying.
It's a definite possibility. I'm not
So
gonna, yeah, I
it-
think it's a definite possibility. We're going to a whole level here very fast, but
Are you wanting to emulate him?
I wouldn't say that. I'm just wanting to look at the science behind this, because look at where this planet is today.
Yeah.
It's all based on our scientific understanding.
Yeah.
Technology runs this planet.
Mhm.
Everything is technology right now.
Even the
the people that
bioweapons
are
are
in control
technology.
of this planet are the ones that control our level of energy, our level of communication through information. These are the big players on the planet that have control over this.
Yeah.
It's all based on our scientific understanding of nature.
And
So
they taught us. They provided the education system you learned from.
Absolutely.
Did you step out of that box because you got ill? Is
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
what happened?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I've never looked back. I
So-
realized my science was the most flawed science, I think, on planet Earth. I was quickly realized that.
How sad though, like you're working in the industry and you realize that it's like some people I
yeah.
know that wake up to, even we talked about doctors who look at their work and they say, shit, I got educated in all of this, and this is what the bottom
Sure.
line is. It's not really helping anybody. It's like
Absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, even people in the medical industry right now are starting to bow out and realizing that what I've learned is not fundamental here anymore.
Yeah, it's not helping.
So there's something about our scientific understanding of nature at the most fundamental level.
Yeah.
I think we're missing something big.
Yeah.
And what we're missing, I think, was we'd have to go back to the works of, going back to Tesla 100 years ago. He was working on something that people haven't figured out yet.
Mm.
And
what do you think?
Going back to philosophy, back to the 1600s, when you get into Rene Descartes, I think
he's the one that separated the mind and body.
I don't think he separated anything.
Okay.
I think that was our interpretation of it.
God, I read a lot of scholars on that because I used his argument as my master's paper.
Sure.
A lot of them supported, and a lot of them didn't support. So
he says the mind and body are distinct, not separated. I've read his Principles of Philosophy. He says he's very clear on that there's a distinction, but a distinction is a word that is very, very, very subtle, and it can have a very subjective nature to it if we're not clear on the way he was seeing the world and how he viewed it.
I thought he used
Do you know what I'm saying?
Word differentiated, which is much more separate than.
I didn't read anything on those words in his work.
Okay.
I've read his Principles of Philosophy just about maybe 3-4 months ago because I was intrigued. So I'm like, this guy was into some serious stuff.
Yes.
And he laid the foundation saying that the most fundamental reality is God. Like that, there was no question in his mind. That is the base reality.
I remember that.
And he was building a theory that rode on that, right? Which nobody else was doing.
And did he see God as an anthropomorphic being, or as a source, or the universal oneness? Like what did you get from his works on talking about God?
He would be called a God substance. A substance is something that, again, is a very, very subtle word to use that would probably describe the very nature of matter at the most subtle level. A substance. which again, we're getting to the element connecting to the ether. I think that's what he didn't use that word, but I think that's what he was describing. And then we have to move to Tesla 100 years ago, and he actually gave us a very interesting description of that on a more detailed basis. Because he kind of said that that ether was a primary substance, but it was something that was beyond all human conception.
And it comes from the earth, the ether, does it? Or
No,
it comes
it's
from,
it's just something that's just here.
oh, the thing that we can't see.
You can't see, you can't even conceptualize it in your mind.
Well, it could be
Which means there's not even-
electromagnetic frequency.
No,
We can't see those.
no, it's something that would generate that.
Oh, so it's
From-
something even more
Oh,
primary.
absolutely. This is more fundamental than anything.
Wow.
You're talking about a dimension of space that would be synonymous with nothing.
Like
No
God,
thing,
like
nothing at
God's
all.
source. Yeah.
There's nothing that you can do to describe this with any
Yes.
language or any spoken
The
words.
mysterious.
100%.
Okay.
That's where Descartes was going. If you
I
read his
didn't
work.
get that from, okay.
That's what
But
I
I
got.
only took snippets.
But
from-
he called, there was kind of basically kind of three substances here that we're dealing with. This God kind of substance, a mind substance. Some people have misunderstood that he thought the mind and the soul were the same. I don't see that anywhere in his work.
No,
He was
I
very
didn't
clear
get
that
that.
there
I
was
didn't
not.
get that, yeah.
And then, of course, the nature of physical reality being kind of the most basic level would be, he called it extension. So it's taking a point and then extending it. And then you can extend it, you can dance it around to create geometry. So there's kind of three levels of this.
How is that different from space if it's distance again?
It's all
His
space.
extension-
It's all
His
space.
extension could be space, yeah.
It is, and he called it that. But
Yeah.
space is kind of in the model that I have, it's three-dimensional.
Hmm.
Starts with the most primary, the most subtle, just basic fluid-like tenuity that we're dealing with in the background
Okay,
that somehow has a way of organizing itself
yeah, the intelligence,
into something that we could actually get into an understanding of what the mind is.
yeah.
And then that has a way of projecting a field of energy that would simulate the elements that we interact with in this physical world. So there's kind of
Wow.
three levels to this that are so deep.
Well, and underneath those is the ether.
That's the primary one.
Holy smokes.
And it resides beyond the mind. There's nothing you could do to think about this. There's nothing you could do to speak on this.
Is it
It's something that
experience?
just is. It has to be something that you would just, if you had a way of taking on that level of substance in your experience,
Yeah. Can drugs take you there?
I think they could take you to maybe a very close snippet of it, but I don't think it gets you anywhere near what that
So the
reality is.
ayahuasca and all
I
that
don't think so.
stuff. Okay.
That's just my opinion. I don't
Yeah,
think so.
yeah.
That's
yeah.
why if anybody takes on that level of reality, which must be the most fundamental reality,
Yeah.
where you've completely mastered the mind, body, and soul.
Oh my God.
You are a master of the universe. That's what it
And,
means to
yeah,
me. That's what it means
yeah,
to me.
Yeah. So that would be God. Do you think, or is there something other than that?
I would just say it's something more connected to the divine, something divinely inspired.
That's
You could
what
use,
God's source is.
you
isn't
could
it?
call it that, but some people get very upset over those words, and
Oh,
I think
because
it's
of the anthropomorphic stuff.
true, and
But I'm not talking about it anthropomorphically. I'm talking about that intelligence. The
Well,
intelligence that created.
What's intelligence? What does it mean to you? How would you define what intelligence really is? Like is?
Creative, creator.
Okay.
Uh,
So it's a level of creativity involved in it,
but
fundamentally.
a person's creating with that intelligence. The way I measured it was that there were, in my world of education, there's several intelligences, like there's social, there's creative, there's music, there's this, but
Right.
all of it that runs through it is intelligence. It's just compartmentalized, right?
Mhm.
And that intelligence runs through every fucking thing.
Yeah.
And it's something that's so, when I think about it, I think about enlightenment.
There you go.
Is that what you?
I would agree.
Oh,
I would say that
Ching, ching.
this kind of primary substance that I'm talking about that connects us to the ether, which is something that we've eliminated from all our science today, by the way, it's gone.
wait a minute, I'm confused by that statement. You just said primary substance that connects us to the ether.
It is the ether.
Okay, thank you. I thought you said connects us to, meaning that it's separate,
No, I would say that that primary substance is this.
is the ether.
It's a perfectly still
Okay.
kind of
Yeah,
fluid-like substance. Perfectly
okay,
still, and it is
yeah,
perfect.
yeah.
Actually, Descartes described it this way
I
exactly.
gotta look at his stuff again
He said it was a
because,
perfect, like a level of perfection.
wow.
So this is how you, this is what we need to create something perfect, right? Even the perfection of a man, perfection of a human being. There's something that's already perfect, and we're just trying to return ourselves to that.
So this is where I have a really hard time. And I just used this whole analogy of perfection
Right?
and said that I didn't believe in it.
You don't think so?
Oh, okay, so this is what, maybe I'm misspeaking, but I keep seeing that people struggle and it's creating a lot of pain. Maybe it's more 3D perfection that people are looking for, like doing everything as they see as perfect, and anything less than that is not enough. So the person is not enough because they can't achieve this perfection. So it's actually making people ill.
What's the controlling influence of that?
Well, a lot of programming and conditioning, right, is what I think. People say it's ego, and that's another one I don't believe when people say we've got to become egoless, like that's the goal. I think we need ego. All of us possess
100%.
it. All of us possess it.
You don't eliminate it. So I know what you're saying. A lot of people
A
are
lot
saying
of people in the
just get rid of
spiritual
it. You can't
community
get rid of it.
say, oh, you're talking from ego. We must dismantle and get rid of ego. And it's like, oh,
Right.
fuck off. So it's the same thing for me with perfection. Like when people are striving for this unattainable thing, that every time that they don't make that, they see themselves as failures, not enough,
Yeah.
less than, and it creates mental health issues,
For
right?
sure.
And they've been conditioned and programmed to believe that that's the benchmark, perfection.
Yeah.
And I just don't, like, I grew up in Catholicism. I think you did too, or was that Jessie who
That's
told
Jessie.
me she did?
Yeah.
Okay. And so that religion says that the only thing that's ever perfect is God, right? But they see it as an anthropomorphical being.
Mhm.
So I knew, don't even try, Ida. As a kid, I thought, don't even fucking try. You're not God. You're never going to be God. So just give up the idea of perfection. And I've had interviews where we've talked about perfection. And as soon as I said, I gave that up a long time ago, it's not something in my philosophy. The people in the interview, I knew they would say, well, what's wrong with perfection? I thought, I don't have this job. Like, and so
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
not ever something that I strived for because I thought it's a hopeless striving because there's only this dude that is the perfect one.
Who's
And
that?
They're God. They're anthropomorphological God.
Is there an embodiment of that? Has there ever been one on this planet?
Well, they say Jesus Christ was,
Is
right?
he the only one?
No, there was Mohammed, Buddha.
Do you think they were? Do you think they were all?
Well, they all at the bottom of it all kind of say the same thing. They just go about it in a different way. And some are very fanatical about it, and some are, more chilled about it. But a lot of the messages cross over.
Mhm.
But so that's the only so it's so interesting because I wrote that. And I wrote that I would rather be authentic than perfect because perfect almost seems like I'm striving to be something I'm not, right?
And you don't think there's something perfect about you at the most fundamental level of who you
That's
are?
what he said. He said, Ida, what if authenticity is perfection? What if you are perfection? And I was like, I never considered that.
Sure.
Because
that's why we have to look at it. If you want to look at it scientifically, you have to bring in the ether. You have no chance to ever understand it if you don't.
Tell me, what do you mean by that?
Which is this perfect kind of substance that we're dealing with that is what we would look at as perfection.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not easy to grasp because we're always trying to wrap our mind to try and understand. See, we can't use our intellectual mind to understand what I'm talking about. It's useless because it resides beyond that. It's much deeper than that. So we have to kind of stop fooling ourselves
So
into
this
trying
is
to
how,
understand
this
this
is how I
intellectually.
think it. This is how I think it. And I know you just said that. But This
Mhm.
is where my mind, brain, whatever goes. Ether, if you're saying is perfect,
It's truth, absolute truth. I would
but
say
is
that
that
too.
perfection?
I would say they're both synonymous. I wouldn't. I
Absolute
wouldn't.
truth and perfection. Okay.
There's no difference really.
Okay. So truth is an absolute perfection, absolute truth and perfection are ether. Ida, not absolute truth, not ether.
Why? Why?
So I can't be perfect.
Why not?
It belongs in that realm, and I'm not of that realm. I'm a human 3D spirit. I'm a spirit inside a container, but I'm not the ether, and I'm not the absolute truth.
So then, how are you having this experience right now?
Okay, there's an intelligence, yeah.
Is it not sitting perfectly still? Like, how do you sense anything that moves? You have to have a reference frame that's absolutely perfect and still, I think, in order to see anything.
This is going beyond what my mind can fathom right now.
Because you're looking at all this stuff, and everything around here is changing. That's how we bring in the nature of time. Is something that defines something that happens now to something that happens now. See, there's a little bit of a difference here. We could say, okay, there was time. Time happened, whatever that is.
Okay, okay, that one is. So what?
But in order to see something that is constantly moving, your reference frame has to be something that is not. Like if you want
not changing or is
not
changing.
like if you see a car drive by on the street right now, the only way you can see it is that you're sitting still. If you hop in a car and go that same speed as that car, there's no difference. Now, I'm not saying that we need to go to that level because there's something that we don't quite understand on that level, because that's where Einstein went too, with his understanding of speed and all these other things and motion. I have a different approach on that.
Yeah.
Which gets into the more fundamental nature of electricity. So we'll leave that for now.
I did terrible in science and in math.
So did I.
Well, you seem to.
I failed physics 3 times.
I did. Oh my God.
I didn't even get into college. I barely got into college.
Wow.
I only went to college for 1.5 years.
Wow.
I didn't pay attention to anything I learned in school. Not one thing. The only thing I was good at was memorizing formulas and when to use them.
Yeah.
I got a B+ average in college because of that.
Wow, that's good.
I didn't know anything.
I couldn't even do that.
I was supposed to be an electrical engineer, but I didn't even know what voltage was. I didn't know what it was.
Wow.
Now that I look back on it, I don't feel so bad because I don't really think anybody knows what it is fundamentally.
Yeah.
We believe we do, but
okay,
I question that.
So I'm going to just take you back.
Yes, we're moving in a different direction here.
Because this started to go time, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Anyway, so what I'm taking you back to is you started out in this way and got very sick with this so-called thing called Lyme that nobody knows.
Right.
And something also happened to you. Not only were you researching and discovering all these things, but didn't you have like a sort of spiritual kind of awakening too?
Oh yeah, big one.
Yeah.
Just a few years ago.
Because you never used to think about these things and talk about these things.
I never had a thought on anything to do with this subjects or anything that we're talking about up until just a few years ago.
Yeah.
So, but it was Lyme disease that started me on that journey. So
You're grateful for Lyme?
I probably might be the only person to ever say that. And I'm only saying that because I've got myself into a good place now where I'm really much not having any symptoms at all anymore.
Yeah.
But I look back on it now and it's a blessing. It's a blessing because it got me seeking.
Yeah.
I wasn't seeking. I was just going out into the world and following the routines, going to work, party with the friends on the weekend and do it all over again, right? I was in that routine.
But you're a quick study. If it only took you 2 years to get to here, holy cow.
Well, I would say 2 years. I would say probably back in 2017, the beginning of 2017 is where something significant took place for me.
Do you want to talk about that?
But it was kind of leading up to that because I was suffering so much with Lyme disease. But it was prior to that time in 2017, I was just doing what I knew how to do to take care of my physical body. I was eating well. I was trying to take supplements and herbs and different things. I was trying to do some electromedicine because Jesse and I were into that. So I was trying to take care of the physical body. But I realized that there were limitations there. And I didn't know that at the time. I know it now, but I didn't know it at the time,
Mhm.
which kind of took me into a place where I just needed to go deeper.
Mm.
And something happened to make that awareness come, and I started looking into that, and I started looking into the nature of, the mind and how that plays into illness.
Yeah.
It's a big one. There's a lot of stored trauma, probably just as well as anybody with the
Yes.
work that you do. A lot of
It's
people
hard.
are hanging on to stuff.
Yeah.
It's a holding. So it becomes an energy storing function, the way I look at it. We want to get
Yeah.
scientific. Something we're
That's what
storing.
resistance is.
There you go. Storage. Energy storage is synonymous with yeah. There's a connection there to resistance, 100%
Yes.
in the
Yes.
electrical world. I'm not
Yes.
getting into that, but there is.
Oh, okay.
There is. So I was hanging on to a lot of that. There were some significant events that from my past that I became aware of, would have no clue about until I did some of the treatments that I was going through, and some of that got cleared. And then a whole world opened up to where I started looking into all these things that we're talking about right now. That's where it started.
Yeah.
I went crazy. Started researching and learning and whatever I could find on some of these subjects, and looking at the nature of what we know in science, the nature of electricity, the nature of light, the nature of
So let me
gravity,
ask
all
you
these things. Like
something.
what like I was determined to try and figure out what it is we know and what it is, what's really going on here.
So
You know what I mean? So
yeah. So what I wonder about, if you if you see it this way, is maybe there was an intelligence that thought, for Kevin, we have to hit him over the head with the hugest whack we can give him in order for him to wake up. So
just
we're
Lyme
gonna,
disease,
so we're gonna give him these things because his journey
the biggest
is,
challenge too. Not just the biggest whack over the head, the biggest challenge, because you're going to need to go look into everything
Yes.
holistically to try and
Yes.
figure this out.
yeah,
And Jesse and I did that. Man, you look at some of the stuff that we did, I look back on it, it's just incredible.
yeah.
Jesse too, because she was sick too,
Yeah.
in her own unique way.
At the same time.
Because hers were more digestive
Yeah,
and with
yeah,
the Crohn's and everything,
yeah.
but there was a level of Lyme involved in that too, 100%.
Yeah.
So there's a level and it really comes down to infection. Do we understand infection?
Probably not.
Like, what's infecting us? What is it fundamentally, especially when we're talking about the things that we're talking about, getting to the fundamental nature
poisons.
of space. But I'm getting into the nature of space, right? Like, what is it that can actually infect another organism?
Yeah.
If you're looking at it from that level.
Well,
that's
they
why
figured it out. Patents of these things, they figured
They
out
did.
how to infect another.
But is that how nature works though? Is this just our artificial
The
world?
ecosystems. They must have studied something to give them the idea how to do it, right?
Right.
And isn't nature the thing that most people look to?
Yeah.
Like, to see how does this work in nature? Let's replicate that. Even taking plant medicines and synthesizing them into pharmaceuticals.
Sure.
They take everything from nature.
I totally agree. But
Yeah.
are we looking at nature through a universal lens? Or are we looking at it through a relativistic lens that looks at it
Probably,
from
yeah.
something relative to something else
Yeah,
and not holistically?
yeah, probably, yeah.
So
we're doing
we're-
relative
If
stuff.
we're eliminating that holistic kind of level of perception,
Yeah,
we can only create destruction.
yeah, that's true.
It's the only, for me, it's the only outcome,
Wow,
because you're not looking at it the way that it actually is.
yeah.
You need to make yourself a universal being to see it that way.
And how does a person make themselves a universal being?
The spiritual path is there for everybody.
What is the spiritual path?
Well, it's a path that's available to all of us to enhance ourselves, to become
Yes.
more than what we
So
are,
is
to
it
grow, to
it-
evolve, to.
Is it a different path for every person, or
It's
is
a
it
unique
universal?
one. It's a universal one, but it's unique to everybody.
Mm.
That's what we can get. That's where it gets interesting, because yes, it is universal, but at the end of the day, we all are going through our unique experience here.
Yeah.
So
it's
there's a level of
relative as well.
uniqueness.
It's relative as well.
Is uniqueness connected to relativity? That's the question. I don't know.
It's
I'm not so convinced.
Hmm.
I'm not so convinced.
Well,
This is
would
some
argue
deep
it
stuff.
at a different, you would,
I
yeah.
would.
I
And
know. And so, you know what? How can people access you? And like, just give them an idea of what you've helped me with in my home, so people can make it
Right.
3D and right down
Right.
to
Well, we didn't really get a chance to talk too much on water, but water is like my favorite subject to talk about
Yeah.
because water is something that there's no such thing as life on this planet without water. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
So
So when the
it's-
grid goes down, water's more important than food.
sure,
Yeah.
water is essential. No question about it. Life will
Yeah.
not survive without it. So
Yeah.
if life evolves around water, then who is the author of life? I think we can come to an agreement on what that would be, right? Some kind of divinely
I
inspired
would
source.
say intelligence. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So then water must be connected to that intelligence directly. Has to be. Has to be.
Mm.
And have we understood that connection? Because this gets into what structured water really represents to me.
Which
May
is
not
what I
be-
have in my home now.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And a lot of people may have their own interpretation of what structured water represents, but that's what it means to me. It's how water is directly connected to the source of this divine intelligence.
Wow.
Now we have to go through a lot of different things to get there.
Yes.
And that's what I've been doing kind of in the background at home, kind of my own unique way. But I think we can get there. And I think that's what's missing is that, if we understood the connection that water has to everything, this divine intelligence, if we could understand this would be a big step forward in where we're at today.
So
And getting back into getting back into harmony with nature.
I saw you with the video with Jesse about water today.
Right.
And the thing that I didn't know that maybe some people would like to hear about,
Right.
you talked about how lots of people think that all these things that are coming into the body through the jabs and everything, they want to get rid of them and eliminate them out of the body.
Mhm.
And you and Jesse were talking about you can't get rid of them, but you can reconfigure or eliminate somehow. I don't know what you said, but it was all they're in the water in your body is what you said, which I thought was
that's kind of where we need to begin, because I
Okay.
think everything that happens in the human body, all the interactions that take place, they seem to be electrical in nature. I think we all agree with that.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, they seem to be happening within the medium inside of us, which seems to be water. Like water is what fills the space inside our bodies. So we're back to space again.
Wow.
So
see, I
inside
was
our bodies,
thinking it
it's
was
all
blood.
water.
I think
Well, what's blood? What's blood made of?
of
It's
water. Yeah.
It's made of water.
Okay. Okay.
Everything. So everything.
So you peel back the layers and go right to the
Sure.
Yeah.
Everything's floating into in water, and I look at water as being that central universal intelligence on how that's what runs our body.
Yeah.
It's through water.
Yeah.
We're kind of getting closer to understanding that, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
And then water itself, I mean, all of our living structure, our tissues, our proteins, if you want to, like our body's just kind of made up of different proteins, if you want to get basic.
Yeah.
The proteins just float in water.
Yes. So does that mean
So-
bacteria and viruses float in the water inside of us? Oh,
Okay,
that's a
well,
good question.
Bacteria aside for now, but looking at viruses, it's like, I would question whether we truly know what we're dealing with here, whether we know what a virus truly is. But what we do seem to know is how a virus can kind of take over an organism, and we can see the reactive elements from that, how the body kind of deals once this virus is kind of running in the background.
Are
we
you
can-
talking
we can
about
see these-
reactions or symptoms? Is that what
These
you mean?
reactive elements.
Yeah. Symptoms.
Because I don't know if we've ever actually seen a virus in its true pure essence.
Mhm.
And we talk a lot about isolating a virus. I don't
Yes.
think it's possible to isolate a virus, because I look at a virus as just information, fundamentally.
Mm.
And in the work that I've done, I look at information as something being universal. If something's truly universal, you can't isolate that.
Mm.
If you were the only thing in
It's in
existence,
everything.
if you were the only thing in existence, imagine trying to look through this universal holistic lens again that we just talked about.
Yeah.
Is there anything that's outside of you and relative to you if you're the only thing in existence? No, there's not.
Yeah.
But we don't see it that way.
No.
We-
No.
We don't see it that way. That's
maybe
the
because
problem.
we've been programmed and conditioned all along to believe a difference.
I agree with you. Our science tells us differently. Yeah.
But who is responsible? So we go back to those damn families who tried to program and condition us to believe all these fucking lies, because we are divine, we were created divinely, and they don't want us knowing that, and they want to harness that and utilize it like for power and everything over us.
Who's they?
Well, I call them the families.
What are they connected to fundamentally? Where do they get their inspiration and their ideas and their thought processes? And what's
They're
what's
probably,
guiding that essentially?
well, there's so many theories, but
There is.
yeah. What do you
Personally,
think?
I like Ike's theory where he's gone with it, because he talks
The
about it being,
reptilian?
well, he looks at it being as more of an invisible kind of archonic
Yeah,
force.
the archons, yeah.
It's an
Yeah.
invisible.
Draco
I would-
Archon,
It's almost like it's a dimension of intelligence, but a very distorted one.
yeah.
One that's not divinely.
Satanic almost.
Okay, now you're using that word.
So,
What is that?
okay, hold on.
What is that word
So,
to you? That's,
to
that's,
me,
that's
I
an
used
important
to
word to
think-
talk about, I think.
I used to think it was anybody with malevolent intent. So their
Okay.
intentions were not benevolent. And I looked at it as a being for most, because that's what I grew up with. But now it's interesting because Randy came up with his own thing that he's talking about in our Aramaic, I think.
What's that?
Satanic means crazy thoughts. So he loves using it because he
Crazy
just thinks it's all
thoughts.
crazy thoughts.
Crazy meaning what exactly? How,
Like
how would we
distorted,
define
chaotic,
chaos?
whatever.
You're talking about chaos.
I
Something
think
that's,
that
there's
Randy,
no level of
you're gonna have to talk to Kevin. I don't know.
or would, see, the word I would insert into that might be deception.
Mm,
You know,
Yeah.
there is a deceptive component here, because that's how I would describe that distorted intelligence would being
so they're
essentially
deceiving people.
it's the author of that deception.
Okay.
And I use the word author because it brings in that there's almost like a creative
Creator.
element to this,
Yeah, yeah,
of creating this world that's kind of upside down to the
Yes.
true nature of what is going on
yeah,
here.
yeah.
And that might be what actually is orchestrating these crazy thoughts that Randall is talking about. There might be a dimension of intelligence behind the scenes here that's
So it's
pulling the strings, if you want to look at it that way.
so or do
you
you
know?
feel like they are connected to the same source, or is it a different source?
I think everything's connected to the same source.
So even though they are deceptive and deceiving, they can still, if they choose, be benevolent, but they are choosing malevolence. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if they're choosing it. I think it's just the nature of their being at this point, because they've just lost that connection.
Are they missing?
It's an-
yeah, I
it's
was
a-
gonna
it's
say,
like
are they missing the pineal
It's a connection
gland?
that's still there, but it's almost extinguished in a way. Like the flame is so dim,
Yes.
and
How
that's
did it
why they
get
seem
there?
to.
How did it get
Man,
so dim?
That's
What do you
crazy,
think?
isn't it? To
try to think about that?
think about that, you have to look at, you know,
Well,
at
their
some
intentions
level,
are so gross.
we are connected to that, in
Yeah,
a way,
we have that too, right? Yeah.
which through our intuitive guidance, in a way, that seems to
Mhm.
be our kind of divine steering wheel to kind of keep us directed on the path to becoming more and more and more spiritual, more enlightened, and more, on that level of benevolence, if you will.
Mm.
But if we stop listening to it and we completely ignore it and shut it off, you're not listening to any of that divine guidance anymore. You seem to be, again, you're just tuned into these crazy thoughts.
Mm.
And there might be a deceptive kind of intelligent kind of author to that, because we've just totally decided, I'm not listening to my intuition. I'm not listening to this divine guidance anymore. Stupid. I don't want any part of it. I'm going to listen to this distorted form of information that's coming into me that seems to be very destructive.
Mm. Mm.
Something like that.
Yes,
Something
yes.
like that.
But you're saying author as in
I would
there's a
use-
creator.
There is a creator.
No,
Is
but- yeah,
Is it not the creator?
the same one that we're all connected to? The
I
God
mean,
source?
Yeah,
Are
I
we
mean,
talking
I look
about
at
the
this
same
as
thing?
it's like a game here. We're trying to return back to our pure essence, but at the same time, we have to go through this storm of
Mm.
crazy thoughts and this author and this intelligence that seems to be
Is it a
creating this level
purifying
of
ritual?
deception. What's
Is
that?
it a purifying ritual that we have to go through? Like
Absolutely.
to purify us?
Absolutely.
Wow.
We have to become more connected to that divinely guided kind of source that we have available to us, and we do that. Again,
So you're saying there's a purpose almost to this deceptive thing because
100%, 100%.
and it's here as part of God's source to purify us.
To get us
to
back on,
get to-
yes.
yeah. Wow, I never thought of
How
that.
would we not know? Like, we have to see the worst in the worst sometimes in order to be able to get us back on track, to get us back to where the truth is.
Yes, I'm just going to
It's
take
important. That's why I like
subject-
that
yeah.
my experience with that, with Lyme disease, was very similar to that. It was a very dark experience,
Yeah,
but that's what brought me towards the light.
yeah,
You have to go through the darkness to see the light. I think this is an old
yeah,
saying that
Yeah,
goes
yeah,
back.
yeah.
It has a lot of meaning here.
yeah,
And that darkness sometimes presents itself as what Randall would say, with these just crazy thoughts, and they seem to be steering us all over the place, causing all kinds of chaos and destruction,
yes,
right?
yes. And so I think we've gone kind of long.
I'm just getting started
I
here.
know. So Kevin and I will do another one
Anyway,
of
we'll
these.
stop there. Yeah, this has been fun.
But you know what? We will look forward. I don't want more darkness in order to have to be purified. I've had enough. Like I don't want any more. I know. I'm gonna pray.
We got a road that we got to walk through here together.
Oh
And
my
we
God.
got to walk through some stuff together here. So we got to be able to, you see, there's something that's available to us that allows us to walk through the worst possible times in our
Yeah.
life and still keep grounded to that
That's our divinity.
fundamental reality.
That's our divinity.
And how would you describe that? You know, what is it that we can do to ourselves to be able to just keep walking throughout, you know, it's like walking through a war zone and being untouched, unshaken.
We were created that way. I think.
Absolutely, fundamentally.
And
So
I think it's been blocked or whatever, not activated or whatever.
are you talking about maybe this level of perfection that resides?
No, I
You're not,
don't-
eh?
I don't want
You don't like that word. You don't, eh? You don't want it. You don't want any part of that.
Only because in the 3D world, I see how much destruction that concept, that programmed and conditioned concept is. Maybe it's not the same concept you're talking about, but in the 3D world, I see people, like anytime I see striving, it's struggle because you're not just landing in what's available and authentic to you. You're striving for something that isn't even you. Do you know what I mean? You're going, and so I see it only create pain in 3D.
So what
but
can we strive for? What's the where
authenticity? That's my thing.
authenticity? Okay.
Oh
So
gosh,
this
Kevin
is,
and I are going to go on and on and on.
We got to break that word apart.
Okay,
Look
we'll
at
do
it,
that next
we'll
time,
look at
Kevin.
it, okay.
Kevin, look over here and say, Yahoo!
Woo-hoo! Great chat.
Okay.
We probably
We'll talk again.
yeah, definitely.
Okay, so bye from Kevin and I. As you can see, also, maybe the three of us should do that.
Oh, this would be fun.
Yeah, Jesse, Kevin, and I. Anyway, okay,
Yeah.
bye for now, everybody.
Bye.